and I accidentally hit the keyboard and made the video stop. So I'll just make this one the new video. Good morning, Autobots. Good morning, family. How are you? Today looks like a crappy day. It is Friday, June the 5th, 2020. COVID-19 pandemic. Yo. Crazy up in my attic trying to teach these Autobots a thing or two about cars. We got students working on big bore kits on their scooters. Mad props to Adorno and Bobby Shampoo for bringing the heat. King always bringing the goods on the Google Classroom. Romer coming through with it, not really coming through with videos. I noticed yesterday's video that I made was my computer said it was corrupted file. I couldn't even, so I'm sitting there trying to upload it in the bar, and I'm like, upload, okay, click complete. And what I didn't realize, there was a little blur message said, upload something incomplete, can't find file error. And I thought it was going to post up because I hit enter and walk away from the computer so the load bar happens, and then the screen after I have my screen set up for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, because I had to go to the bathroom and blah blah blah, get something to eat, drink. And I came back and the screen was blank, so I squiggled it and the windows opened up. So I just X'd out of all the windows. And I X'd out from the upload, which had been telling me that it was bad. So, yeah, there's no video. I'm going to do another video this morning. This will be a short Friday video. And then I'll do another video for yesterday where I read the automotive word of the day, right? And so we'll get that done in the next. I'll do the video right after this. This will be short. This will be like a 15-minute video. It's literally, there's no classwork today from me other than what I can post. Today's video is just my eyes hurt. I have a headache. My glasses don't fit well. I was starting to say this on the previous video, but I got to remember to put my arms away from my keyboard so I don't automatically stop the video. So this morning I was I'm yawning because I'm exhausted. I haven't done anything, which is terrifying. Computer keyboard work is exhausting. I have newfound respect for my best friend in the whole wide world, Tim Miller, my brother from another mother, someone I've known since I was 15 years old. That's 35 years we've been best friends. That's my bro. That's some old school stuff. Tim Miller, he works at a place called S. June Smith. He is a grant writer, program manager, and IT specialist. He does IT, information technology. He takes care of the IT systems at S. June Smith and the parent company because they got taken over. But he was so good at what he did, they kept him, made him a big boss, which is, I'm so proud of him, so happy for him. But I know his day is spent in front of this keyboard at a laptop or a computer, and I'm at a point where I get a migraine headache from looking at the screen about every hour and a half. I got to stop 10 minutes, rub my nose. I do this. And I just rub because the pain sits right behind my eyeballs. And when I squeeze on my skin by my nose and up here, it gets rid of it. And I've already taken aspirin. I've taken, I got naproxen, which is like ibuprofen at 1,200 milligrams. It's enough to put down a baby elephant, but it scratches the surface for me. Meaning I'm fat and big and I need lots of medication and tranquilizers. Crap, but it hurts. And then I go for another Another hour I stare at the screen and the lighting is a little too bright. There we go. No, off is bad, high is bad. I guess medium's okay, I guess. You get enough backlighting and it's not as strain on the eyes as it would be otherwise. And I can just imagine you guys staring into your little cell phones. I can't even read this anymore. I can't, this is me being old. Trying to read my cell phone. I need a tablet. That's what I need is I need a freaking tablet in order to properly navigate my cell phone. So I literally have to, and I got messages I got to go through. My buddy Tim sent me an LOL. Yeah. I'm going to say brain hurts we have a Google text messaging group with the staff members, and I just wrote brain hurts. My daughter goes to Springfield Renaissance. Like, I need to. There we go. I can read that. Anyways. And you guys, we're asking you to do so much about, and I know we are. And I know sometimes it seems, oh, Mr. Romer, we're just doing a couple hours worth of work. Yeah, but even that on a little cell phone sucks. It's better if you have a laptop. Laptop, you can crank out some hours. I can every day. I'm here on my laptop from pretty much 7:30. I'm sipping on a coffee, or I'm back here, and it's okay. It's not as stressful. But I'm going through emails, and then I'm leaning forward for the webinars and trying to pay attention. And sometimes I don't even recognize, like today we had a webinar in MyPace. I was telling you guys that. And the lady started talking about PARS. And she started talking, and my brain just went. And I'm staring at the screen, and I'm looking at all the people, and I'm like, she just said something about CDP instructors and PARS, and that's me. And I have no idea what she's talking about. And it's funny because your brain disconnects. Like I get not frustrated in an angry way, but like I'll sit there and go, really? These are these high muckety muck types that are they're in on computers every day. Computers is their life, and they're doing the Google thing, and they're doing the Google Classroom and Google this, and everything's all Google now. None of it's Microsoft. It's all Google. They're shifting over. Apparently, Google has made some inroads into Job Corps, specifically the Department of Labor. And I'm going to have to research this because, I get called a conspiracy theorist, and it's not a theory when it turns out to be right. There was a time people said, oh, you got a conspiracy theory on such and such a thing. And then lo and behold, yeah, the U.S. Navy released UFO footage. Yeah, well, there's that. And it's all glossed over, and I'm like, yeah, I've seen one. With my own two eyes. I saw a UFO with my own two eyes. But I could shout that to the moon. I could yell and scream and shout, and people would just go, hey, Romer, you were out at sea for a while, weren't you? Seeing stuff? What were you smoking? Smoking lamp was lit. You having a little cigarette extra on the fantail? Huh? When you were flying around in the helicopter, getting in those fumes? To which I responded, no, dude. Stone cold sober. Looked up. Saw them little Tic Tac looking things. Saw one. I didn't see them. I saw one. But it was enough to freaking change my worldview. My whole world changed in 30 seconds. It's all it took. It's all it took. Because that thing didn't come from this planet. Period. I was very well aware, being in the military, doing what I was doing. I was well aware of what we had in the American ordnance. I knew the jets we flew, even the back then. The big scary thing was the F-117, the Nighthawk. It was a very angular looking. It basically looked like a paper airplane that an origami specialist would make. And it was designed that way so radar waves wouldn't bounce off of it. It was actually a very poor performing flyer, very unstable. I heard horror stories from pilots that the beginning F-117s were notoriously finicky at slow speeds. They did better at altitude. Their operational envelope was, I think, it's like 30,000 feet. 20 to 30,000, I think 20 block to 30 block was what they loved flying in. But it had real bad yaw characteristics at slow speed. It had poor transitional performance. It was not a friendly fighter, or in this case, bomber. It dropped a lot of bombs. So it was a bombing aircraft for more than anything else. I mean, it could barely dogfight. It was aerobatic, but that was just a black. So you can tell an F-117 because it looked like a flying triangle with the back end jagged off. That's what your eye sees when you look up and you see an F-117 flying overhead at night. And it's painted flat black. So unless you're looking for it, the con will come over and, we would get information, and we knew we'd have a flyover of F-117s. So we'd be all out, eyeballing it. And when the sun is setting, because they operate at night, so which means they have to get on or near station at dusk, you'd see the silhouettes come in. Very particular aircraft. A lot of Army guys you have NVGs, you can watch them fly over at night and stuff. Thermally, they show up okay. I was never able to see one on FLIR, but my pilot said that, and co-pilot said you can see him. There's ways you can see him, but we could. The enemy, the Iraqi forces couldn't see shit. They had nothing. But when you see a Tic Tac the size of, my eyes would peg it at a little bit bigger than a big Greyhound bus. A big Greyhound bus. But round, like white and rounded edges. White. Silvery white. And that sucker, and the only thing that I can like, I didn't know how to describe it when I was younger because I didn't have the years behind me. But I learned something recently within the last couple of years. And it made perfect sense. So if you go on Google right now, you're going to go and you could look up flux locking, magnetic flux locking using supercooled fluids or refrigerants. Usually they use liquid nitrogen. And so what they do is they create a super magnet. I'm trying to, right now in the morning, all I'm thinking of is MyPace. It's tough to drag my brain out of it into something interesting. Not that MyPace isn't interesting. My beard's itchy. Sorry, I have ADD. There we go. So what happens is if you pour liquid nitrogen over a magnet, it becomes an energy. The energy that goes through the magnet becomes pure and free, and there's zero loss. And for the life of me, as I sit here right now, I've forgotten what that term is. When electricity flows freely with zero energy loss. I keep coming back to Elon Musk's like Hyperloop, hyper this, hyper that. It's not hyper. It's not a Bose-Einstein condensate, which is something that happens when you cool off gases that have turned into liquids, and the liquids then become they behave like one single molecule. That is a Bose-Einstein condensate. That is not what I'm thinking of. Anyways, the term will come to me. So anyways, you chill off a magnetic track, like a round track, and then superconductor. It's the hyper word that messed with my head. It's just a superconductor. So you take a series of magnets and you lay them out in a circle with north pointing up or south. I don't know the particulars at this point. And then you literally pour liquid nitrogen over the track, and then you take a rare earth magnet or like a cadmium disc, and you immerse it in liquid nitrogen and you supercool it so it becomes a superconductor. You can watch videos of these guys with the superconductors taking the disc, putting it on top of the magnetic circular track, and letting it go, like taking it and going whoop, like a hockey puck. This thing would go around the magnetic track, no strings, nothing underneath, and it would sit like if I had released it an inch away from the magnetic track, it would stay an inch above the entire magnetic track. I can then take it, grab it, and push it down to a quarter of an inch and send it around the magnetic track. It was magnetically locked at a specific height. The little hockey puck, the metal-ish, it looked like a washer, right? Washer, those big flat washers we have in the shop. You took one of those and you super cooled it, to make it a superconductor, and then send it around the track. The flux lines. So what it does is it rides flux lines. When I saw those videos, the first thing I said to myself was, the Tic Tac was riding Earth's magnetic flux lines. Boom. That's why it flew funny. And it didn't. So, and here's the other thing. We say it flies. Does not fly. It is locked in a magnetic flux line. That's the way this Tic Tac behaved to me. That it moved and stopped, elevated and stopped, oriented. Like at first it looked like a circle, and then it went whoop, and I'm like, oh, Tic Tac. But you're sitting there going, we don't have one of those. That isn't ours. I see no contrail. I hear nothing. And even at miles away, then I would figure this thing was mile and a half. Nothing. No sound. No exhaust, no roar. You can hear F-14s on full afterburner 20 miles away. Easy peasy. Not in front of the aircraft going away. Coming in, you don't hear them until they're on top of you. You hear a general, well, if they're transonic, you don't hear shit until they pass over you. Hypersonic, when they go faster than the speed of sound. But even if they're flying around, anytime their exhaust nozzles would have an angle on the ship, or even inside the helicopter, you could hear them in the helicopter. It's loud as all get out in the helicopter, but you can hear an F-14 on afterburners. The F-18s weren't quite as loud. I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. Pilots, anybody can tell me why. I don't know. I just know that the F-14s on afterburner were like the most loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, not even, it doesn't become sound at that point. It becomes shaking, like your body's reverberating with it. Like if you're on the flight deck, oh, forget about it. You know, I don't know how those guys work the flight deck every day. I'd have. You go. Well, I am deaf. I'm not deaf. I have partial hearing loss. I know people who are actually deaf. You're not deaf. I'm not deaf. They're deaf. But my hearing loss is at a particular frequency set, which means I can still hear whispers when the room is quiet. It's just a certain frequencies are gone. Anyways, so yeah, and I watched it come out of the horizon, rotate, so I can see that it looked like a tic-tacing out a little globe, and it took off from where I was facing this way, and then it stopped, and then it went up, and then it went back down again, and then it moved, and then it like literally the acceleration that this thing pulled. When something flies away from you, it's a gradual thing. You can watch it diminish and diminish and diminish and diminish. Even things that you think are ungodly fast, you can still watch diminish. So the other weird part was, and I think I made a comment to one of the other sailors that was on deck. When this thing bugged out, when it went, it went away. No sound. No breaking the sound barrier sound. No jet thrust sound. Nothing. Nothing. Anyways. So that's my crazy story, right? And people for years like, yeah, Romer. Oh, and then the Navy releases videos. Not quite such the conspiracy theorist, am I? It ain't theory when it's right. Anyways, so Google has really made the move on Department of Labor's Job Corps. These people that I listen to, 11:45, these people that I hear and listen to on these webinar meetings, the last three have been brutal. Google, everything Google. It's like somebody from Google gave them money. They didn't. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm not saying they didn't, but I'm saying they didn't act. I have no proof of that statement, nor do I have thoughts on it. It was just a throwaway funny. But a lot of these Job Corps higher up muckety mucks really pushing the Google thing. So we got to roll with it, and that's fine. I got no dog in the fight. You know, I got no foot in the sand on that one. We'll use whatever they want to roll out. My only concern is that it's more learning that has nothing to do with automobiles for me or for you. You guys have to, for you, it's a little different. You're the young generation where, I remember when I first got my beeper, my dad was like, the hell's that thing? Like, it's a beeper, Dad. People can call it. Let me know that they called. I see their phone number. Why don't they just call the house phone and leave a message like every other human being on the planet? Like, because sometimes I might be in my car. Well, I'll just leave a message on the answering machine then. I'm like, Dad, maybe I'm not going to be home for a while. Stupid. It's stupid. Like, it's not stupid. It's how people, Mom calls. Mom calls my beeper. I see the number from the house show up. I got to get to a phone and call. This is back when we didn't have cell phones. We had to stop, find a payphone, get a quarter, put it in. The first payphones were you had to actually put your finger in this plastic dial that had the numbers and go hit 2 and then bring it to the right down to this little silver bar. Oh my God, you guys don't even know about that. Yeah, rotary phones. So yeah, my dad was like, stupid beepers. It's like fuel injection. I bought my first Datsun 280Z. It had fuel injection. Granted, like my dad rode me, made fun of me. He made fun of me to begin with, but when the Datsun torched because the fuel injection system, uh, the fuel rubber, the rubber lines that were for the fuel, and when I bought the car, the guy had done some work and was mucking about with the fuel injectors. He got bigger fuel injectors, and he had to alter the fuel rail a little bit, and it didn't sit right. And the rubber tubes that went, because the fuel rail did not attach directly to the fuel injectors. There were these little rubber things that he had made to carry the fuel from the fuel rail, which he had somehow threaded in tubes like air chucks, but small for fuel injectors. And I have no idea why he did this. But anyways, I bought the car. It was running. And like 2 weeks, 3 weeks into owning it, the fuel leaked out. And I tried starting the car. And yeah, I noticed smoke coming out of my hood. And I wasn't thinking gas at this point. I didn't even smell it. But it was that quick that fuel got. So the old distributor caps, contact system, because I don't even, yeah, the Datsun 280Z, the first motor had a rotor, cap and rotor. Didn't even have coil packs or anything like that. It had one coil, and gasoline got near, not the coil, but the contactor, spark advance. And so my dad tells me that that's where the fuel went, caught fire. And all I saw was a lot of smoke coming out of my engine. So I thought, oh, I didn't blow my motor, because it was running rough. Obviously, it wasn't getting fuel. So I turned it off. I jumped out, popped the hood, and the hoods don't open front of the car up. They open from the driver. Like I'm driving my car, my hood opens up this way so you can look in your engine bay. So I popped the hood, and the smoke came out a lot. I'm like, oh shit. I reached and grabbed my finger, hit the lock, and pulled it up. And as soon as I went like that, it went whoosh. Ah! Right? I shouted. I don't know where my dad was, but all I know is he was in the backyard. And he grabbed the garden hose. I went over to I don't know which truck I was driving at the time. We had a truck. It wasn't the Ford F-150. It wasn't the Bronco. The hell was it? Anyways, I had an old, and it worked. I had a fire extinguisher, just like an ABC fire extinguisher, a powder fire extinguisher, the kind you buy at Pep Boys or whatever. And it was not a little one, the stupid ones. It was a sizable one. Still in its cardboard box, all faded and peed on from dogs and stuff. I remember like smelling like, I hope it works. And it works. My dad's laughing. There's nothing more embarrassing than having your dad be a car guy and you want to be a car guy, and your pride and joy car that you bought with your own money. He helped out. He matched a little bit, but a little. Like, I think he gave me like $500 towards it. The rest of it was me. I think I bought it for like $2,000 or whatever. And I bought my first car, and I was so freaking proud of myself. And I've had it for 2 weeks, and my dad's, dumb Japanese car. I don't know why you don't have a normal car. Normal car. Thanks, Dad. Normal car. Mustang, or you can get a Camaro or Firebird, or Japanese import piece of crap. And he was sitting there. I'm blasting away fire extinguisher powder onto my car. And I hear my dad squirting hose water at my car, laughing. Not worried, not angry, not freaking out, laughing. Some of the shit he was saying to me. What you gonna drive now there, sonny boy? Yeah, looks like someone's out of a car. Ooh. Ooh. Not gonna run. That was the one that actually made me laugh a little bit after the fact. Like I sat and I was having a moment to myself. He goes, not gonna run too well after that. I was like, nope. No, it won't. It won't run at all. Because what happens is in a fire, all the electronics burn. All the wiring has the plastic synthetic vinyl coating that they use that make it engine friendly. It all burns. It all melts. So the wiring is shot. The fuel injection shot. Fuel injection pump shot. All of the interior engine electronics shot. Everything was just a mess. Frame was great. We stopped the fire within, like, my dad put the hose. I ran to the truck. I say it all took a minute. I want to say 45 seconds, but I know there's time dilation. I know that things slow down and then speed up, and you don't get a real accurate read. Sometimes, oh shit, that was 30 seconds. Like, dude, that was 5 minutes. Or you can say, man, that was forever. And like, that was 10 seconds. your perceptions both speed up and slow down. I'll say a solid minute. See, no, it wasn't a minute. It was 45 seconds. It was just 45 seconds because the interior of the car was fine. Not even really smoke damage. It was like I drove near a barbecue. That was it. The stumps of wire insulation fused at the firewall, and so all those fumes didn't make their way inside. And I already ganked and sealed off the air conditioning because it was stinky, and so I was like, "Fuck that," And it wasn't running. It was one of the first things I did. The guy's like, "Oh, the AC don't work," and I tried messing with it, and I jumpered it to 12 volts, and then it came on. It was squealing and stunk to high heaven like something had died in the AC. So I was like, ah. So I pulled the AC pump off, got a shorter serpentine for it, and I remember pulling the AC pump hoses and things, and it went to this box. Inside the box was the little condenser and all that shit to blow cold air in, and I pulled that all out. But it was only like this big from the firewall. And I remember taking, I wasn't a welder yet. And I remember taking a piece of metal and drilling holes and riveting it and then sealing it with like plumber's dope or whatever it was that I was using. Whatever I grabbed off my dad's work table. And that stuff held. It held. Nothing got through from the engine bay into the cabin, driver's cabin. And I sat there staring at the hulk of my car in the driveway at my dad's. And finally, I remember waking up one morning, maybe 2 or 3 days later, because I was using the truck at that point again. A beat up piece of shit. And I can't remember what it was. I know Timmy had the Dodge Power Wagon. It was like an S10. Like a Chevy S10. Not the Blazer. A little itty bitty. Oh, I know what it was. It was the S10 pickups that back then it was SNET, Southern New England Telephone. They had these little SNET trucks with the ladder racks on, and the little caps on the back. It was disgusting, but my dad bought it at auction for like $300. It was a jalopy, but it ran. I got to give it that little four banger, that little inline four, the little four-speed manual transmission. Didn't even have overdrive. It was horrible, 2-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive. It saw a snowflake, it would just start skidding like a puppy wagging its tail. It was ridiculous. But it was great for hauling crap around, going and grabbing motors or transmissions or whatever. My dad would say, "Hey, go down to the shop or go down to the dealership and grab such and such. Take the truck." So I would take the truck. But I was back into the truck because the Datsun burned, and I came home and the Datsun got moved. I didn't move it. I had originally, after the fire, we had pushed it to the side, lined up. There's like 3 cars, and I was like halfway on the driveway, halfway on the grass. And I remember I came home and the Datsun was gone. Saw my dad's car, saw my mom's car because she would come and visit. One of Dad's work projects that he had set aside was in the driveway, and I know that he had, at that point, he was working on he was working on the Torino. He was working on the dark green Torino at that point, and we were getting the list together for parts that we were going to get, and pulled into the driveway, and I got out and I looked around the corner into the garage, and I see Dad, and I'm like, "Yo, where's my," and I said, like, "Where's my car?" I was going to say, and I see it. He had pulled the Torino out, pushed my car in, put the Torino back. And I'm like, "Well, thanks. Thought I was going to sell it. Thought I was going to get rid of it, junk it, and get something else." And my dad's like, "Nope." And I'm like, "Okay. We're going to remotor it?" And he goes, "Yeah. You're not going to get fuel injection. That's stupid." Dad. And I go, "We're going to put carbs on it?" He goes, "We're not using that stupid motor." They have no idea how to build a motor. And he had set up the engine hoist, and I'm like, "Oh, what are we going to do then?" And he goes, "The Cleveland that we got last year from the Coen Brothers?" And I was like, "Yeah, you were going to stick it in the Mustang." He goes, "What happened?" I go, "You went with the bigger motor. And I thought you were going to set that aside for the other project." And I remember what other project. Might have been the Torino. And he goes, No, going big block. So we're going to put that Cleveland in. Problem is, I don't like the heads. I'm like, "Okay. So we're going to bore them out a little bit. We're going to hog them out." I'm like, "I ain't going to do nothing. I don't know nothing about that." He goes, No, I'm saying I'm getting it done." And I'm like, "Okay." Port matching was what it was back in the day when you went from the manufacturer's single plane intake manifold and you got an aftermarket like a Wind high rise or a single plane set of long intake runners. Sometimes from the companies that make them, they're really big, and so you got to like port match them. Anyway, so Dad did that and got a Demon 650. Yeah. No, not a Demon. No, 650 double pumper. He got a 650 double pumper Holly. And yeah, put that on the motor, got it running. And believe me, getting an engine running that's carbureted is just as simple as putting the carburetor on, hooking up a fuel line, and then hooking a battery with jumper cables to the starter motor. Not that simple. You still have to get spark plugs in the rotor and all that, but it's nothing like fuel injection. It's very simplified. So that afternoon, we ganked the L28 motor out of the 280Z. And wow, 40 minutes in talking about, I went from UFOs to pulling motors for my Z car that I torched. Ended up dropping the Cleveland in. And I remember having the engine lowered down into position, and then we were taking measurements because Dad was going to have his buddy weld. Now was another thing, he had to have his buddy weld in extensions to the engine mounting brackets. The mounting brackets, there were brackets that came out from the frame. They had a center point where the center bolt came in, and that center bolt was the fulcrum point for the two angled joists that you bolted into the engine block. Or reversely, you can take those joists, bolt them to the engine block, then take the motor lower down and put the pins through. The pins themselves were mounted like these rubber, like a rubber sleeve. Not a very good design, but whatever. And I remember we were under there, and Daddy was taking Polaroid camera pictures of. That's what it was back then. Polaroid pictures, baby. Where it, and then it comes out the front. You got to wiggle it. You didn't have to wiggle it, and you didn't have to blow on it. But people take pictures and then go, thinking that it would come out quicker. It didn't. It didn't. The chemicals worked one way. It didn't matter. But we would all do it, thinking that. The same thing is, you guys remember the original Nintendos? And you get the cartridges, and it wouldn't work. And so you're like, why isn't it working? And put the cartridge back in, and you'd think it would work. Made it worse. You were putting moisture on the motherboard inside the plastic thing. What it was is dust on the contact points. The best thing to do, I was told afterwards, was to take a cloth, get a little bit of rubbing alcohol on the cloth, take the cloth and go, and just rub across the contacts. And the alcohol would take away any dusty kind of elements that would keep the contacts from closing down on the game cartridge. Anyways, things that people did. And so the biggest thing, believe it or not, wasn't the engine. The engine was going to fit just fine in the engine bay. The biggest problem for the build was the transmission. We had to cut the tranny tunnel because the shifter was like 4-6 inches back from the native location of the 280Z tranny. And the fact that we needed to get a custom drive shaft because we were using the T5, just a standard. All I remember is it was an old Mustang tranny. That's all it was, 5-speed transmission out of a Mustang. That's all it was. And so I don't remember the numbers. You know, I'm sure King or one of you guys, it's a TA400 T5/56.3. It was a Mustang tranny, 5 speed. That's all I know. And it bolted up directly onto the 351 Cleveland, like literally. Put the bolts in and then putting it in. Now the thing is, because the hood of a Datsun rolls forward, got to take the hood off. So then there was with the engine and the transmission, and wheeled it over, snugged it right in. We looked underneath. The headers are going to clear. The driver's side was okay. The passenger side, I think, had to take it. My dad took a sledgehammer, banged the header over a little bit, like creased the runners to clear like an edge. Rather than cutting the edge, he banged in the header. So, yeah. Welcome to my dad in my life. And so we finished mocking up the location. Dad took the pictures of the Polaroids again. Final fitment. 2 weeks went by. We finally got the new engine hangers in, and we had put the engine mounts in. And once the engine mounts were in, my dad we jacked the car up with the engine locked in, bolted in, but the transmission was strapped. We had a leather strap that went around the transmission and up through the transmission tunnel and then tied off on a 2x4. There was a big 2x4 in my car. And the transmission, those straps were tied off on the top of it. I don't even remember. Like one side had a buckle on it or whatever. And so that was what was holding the transmission tucked up to the transmission tunnel. And so we had to take more pictures and measurements. But that one came back the next day. I remember Dad called him up. I can't even remember the guy's name. It was just the welder guy. But my dad called him up, was like, yeah, we got one more piece. The transmission needed a stanchion, a cross member to hold onto it, to give it some support. And we didn't use the native location because it was just, couldn't use it. So Dad looked for another spot, and there was another spot that Datsun had already used, like that location for something, and you could undo. There were sizable bolts too. The bolts were really good size. It was, I think it had something to do with the exhaust system, or I don't know. I just know that there were 2 bolts there. He got all excited, and he said, "Oh, we could use that. Find out what that was. Get the pitch on it. Get the size and pitch." They were metric. And I remember my dad's like, "Fuck that. We're gonna tap it. We're gonna tap it. We're gonna tap it, and it's gonna be 1/2 inch." I'm like, "What?" It wasn't 1/2 inch. But we did tap it to. We drilled and tapped the metal location for standard size back in the day, and so tapped the metal points, got the new cross member in for the transmission, and then I remember it was a Friday afternoon. Came home from school, didn't have to go to the gym, didn't have football. We had a game the next night, so we just had like a team meeting and stuff. Coach didn't want anybody hurt, and I got home early. And I remember seeing my car get towed away, and I was all. So I drove in. I was like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Oh, it's going down to Vance's." I'm like, "Oh." Vance was in New Haven. They were a drive shaft company. And it wasn't, and so here's the other thing. It wasn't lightweight. It wasn't aluminum. It wasn't carbon fiber. It wasn't any of that. It was just custom length drive shaft. That's all it was. And I remember we had the R200. I do remember this. I had the 2+2 differential in it. That was one of the things that the guy did before me. He had a 2+2, and he was migrating parts over from the 2+2, which was a stronger platform for the Datsun 280Z. It had the better transmission. It had the better rear end. It had a lower compression ratio, which was turbo friendly. And these are all things he was going to do, but then he needed money, and that's where I stepped in and bought the car. So I had the upgraded rear end, which could handle a couple of 100 horsepower. It was really, really cool that way. And the torque. I think like 230 foot-pounds of torque. It was sufficient. Cut to like Wednesday of the following week. Come home from school. Cars in the driveway. Wah! Cars here, cars here. Wah! Dad comes walking out. He's like, "Well, she's a runner." I'm like, "Oh," which means it was quick. She goes, "First gear's useless." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "First gear's useless. It just spins." And all of a sudden I was like, because burnouts were like how teenage boys back in 1984 and 85 showed how cool they were. And when I tried doing a burnout with the old inline 6-cylinder, rickety, 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 oh. Every time I'd pop the clutch or dump the clutch, it would go and then stall. It was horrible. I couldn't do a burnout. I could not do a burnout at all. I hadn't yet mastered gas, like heel towing. Like now I could do it all day long. I know you could make a Hyundai do a burnout. Should pressure on the brakes, let off enough brakes so the rears let go, but there's still a front biased on the brakes, and you just, well, Hyundais are front wheel drive. What's a rear wheel drive car? Anyways, so back then I was stupid. I didn't know a lot of what I was supposed to be doing in a car. Later I did. My dad was nice enough and kind enough to send me to Bondurant School of Driving, and then I went to Skip Barber's school at Lime Rock, which is how I found out about Lime Rock. My dad took me, and I took some classes, and that's where King teaches now. And I think for Skip Barber. How cool is that? But Skip Barber was a friend of my dad's, and my dad was like, he doesn't know what he's doing, Sean. And it was a weekend, and it was you show up on Saturday morning with a notebook and pencil, and there I was, fresh-faced teenage boy. I'm gonna race car today. I'm gonna race car. I didn't race car. I sat in a room and learned about Ackerman angle and slip angle, heel towing, and it was all up on the chalkboard on a whiteboard, little magic markers and shit. And at the end of the day at 3:30, I was like, huh? The next day we did have little spurts about we were not allowed to travel the racetrack. It wasn't it. We were allowed to travel sections of the track. We would come out and come down and do something, clones, and then we'd come back in. I think it was the straight. We would come out from where the paddocks were, and they had coned everything off, and we would start. And Bob was in the passenger seat, and he goes, "All right, now practice what we talked about yesterday. You're going to keep your toe here, and you move your heel over, and you vroom, 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 vroom. Let the clutch halfway out. Keep the pressure on the gas pedal. Okay, now the tires are warm. Now ease off on the brakes, really lay it into the gas, and let go of that clutch." It was this whole dance of your toes, and it was beautiful. That was the start of me understanding. But before that, I had no idea. I was just stick in gear, rev the snot out of it, and dump the clutch. Later, I figured out, I'm like, why can't I do it? So there were several things going against me. I had sticky tires on the back of the car. They weren't piece of crap. They're like snow tires. They were really good tires. I don't remember what I had on it. Not Pirellis or anything, but back in the day, I had like Gatorback. Why does the word Gatorbacks come to mind? Goodyear Gatorbacks? Is that what they were called? They were sticky. Anyways. So my dad's like, first gear is useless. And I was like, yay. Because I knew exactly what that meant. That meant you stick it in first gear, and there was enough torque in the engine where it would just, when I mean my car turned into a bake monster, first gear was useless. It didn't riggedy. It went, and the rear end would just go like this, and it would hiss. And at first, nothing would happen. And all of a sudden, deep, thick, gray smoke would just start billowing out from the car. It was epic. So excited. I did my first rip. Solid burnout. Thursday morning, I was 10 minutes early for school in the school parking lot. The police officer that's supposed to post up at the bottom end of the school hadn't even shown up yet. I had already called all my homes, right? I called all my homies, told Timmy and Jimmy and Sean and everybody else. I called everybody. I was like, yo, the car's ready, right? So I got to school, and they're like, yo, what happened? I thought you burned your car. And I was like, yep, Dad and I put a 351 in it. They're like, no way. Pop the hood. Ba-cha! New intake, all high-risey, little, and I remember back in, it was this little silver air cleaner at the top of it, almost like looking like a little top hat on it. My hood did no longer fully closed because it pushed down. Like if you fully closed it, it would push down on the hat. So you could only click it into a first position, which actually helped out the cooling issues that we had with it. There were some cooling issues. My car did not like to idle for more than 2 minutes. You idled my car for more than 2 minutes, it got warm. We never changed the radiator. The radiator was the original 280Z radiator, which handled a 2.8 liter inline six, and we went and stuck 351 cubic inches under it, which was like a 5.7 liter or something like that. right? Whatever the numbers were. What did I know? And even my dad, and I thought my dad knew a lot about cars. And now that I do know about cars, because I've read this and I've had a lifetime of learning, not just my dad, but people, and learning and not being afraid to say, I don't know, and go, well, then let me teach you. And I go, okay, I learned. Now, after a lifetime of learning, I recognize that there was not nearly enough frontal area, nor the core was large enough to handle the amount of heat that my engine was generating for that particular application. I needed to vent the hood. I needed to do all kinds of things to that engine bay in order to make that. And the engine ran great when you were doing like 50, 60, because enough airflow got through and the heat was just pushed out of the radiator. But if you were trundling around at 20, 30 miles an hour, you would routinely see me peg the needle to 10, 12, and this is before I knew the engines like to be, but like 250, 260. I'd always freak out because it was getting too hot, so I'd have to go quick. Of course, I had to go quick. It's a 351 Cleveland and a Datsun 280Z. But yeah, I remember the very first burnout Thursday morning after I received the car on the Wednesday. It was hump day. And I got my car and I rolled into the parking lot, and Timmy was already there. Sean was already there. And I stopped, and it was like, I wish we had video cameras back then that we could use. They were down at the bottom end of the parking lot, and I just pulled in. When you leave, there's an in-and-out road, and then there's the square parking lot, and there's different rows, and they're at the bottom towards the school. And I stop at the top, and the cop hasn't even gotten in yet. And I go, stuff it in the first. And again, I had not been to the Butterin School or Skip Barber's. I just revved it and dumped the clutch. And I just rode first gear. I could have actually shifted. Like now you learn things. But back then I just stuck it in first and revved it and watched the needle on my coolant just climbing on up. But it was fine. I didn't give a fuck. I didn't give a hoot. And it was one of the most epic burnouts ever until another kid who had a Dodge, a Roadrunner with, I got nitrous on it. He didn't even need nitrous. The tires on his car were skinny. They were original rubber, and they looked like they were made for snow in Sweden. They were horrible. Every time he got on, the guy's like, I could lay strips down. Doing 60, I'll put strips down behind my car. And I'm like, because you have bicycle tires on the back. I didn't. Now I know. Those old Challengers and the old Road Runners. Of course you could put 2 strips down. You had no tires. There was like 2, what is it? He had Huffy tires on the back. 80 series. Tiny. They looked like they belonged on a Hyundai and a Honda, not on a muscle car Roadrunner with a 440 6-pack and a nitrous. What a dog. What an absolute cow of a car that is now. Back then I was like, so pretty. Now I'm like, no. Epic burnout. I was the man for a couple of days. Went into the weekend. Promptly dinged the back right quarter. Just coming around the corner, too much juice, not enough whoa. Slid the rear end out. And if you've ever seen a Datsun 280Z, you practically sit over the rear axle. The engine and the nose of the car is long, and you sit all the way back, almost in the trunk, where the lift gate is for the back of the car. It's just a hatchback. And the polar momentum shift, and first off, the Cleveland was heavier motor and put much more weight over the front tires. And it added a little weight to the rear, but not enough for it to be a balanced scenario. The car handled okay, but with that added amount of torque, even the smallest throttle input, and I blipped it. just holding on like I was in a teacup ride at the circus. And we stopped when the rear end of my thing smacked into a person's rock at their driveway, and I only did minor damage, and I went home. Dad, I bent the quarter. He's like, well, get the mallets out. He didn't want to be bothered. Said, you okay? Yeah. Did you break anything? No. Is anyone going to sue us? No. Won't fix it. Okay. So I go out. Half-assed job. Sprayed a little spray paint where the paint got chipped because it was rock. That was pretty much the only damage I did to my car. And my sister loved it. She drove it for a little bit. I don't remember what happened to it. Navy. Sold it. Got married. I lost a lot of things. And not lost. So when I got married, and because my then ex-wife, my now ex-wife, then wife, when we got, not we, I hate when people say we got pregnant. I didn't get pregnant. She did. I got her impregnated. That was my job. But when she had Ashton, my oldest daughter, I joined the Navy to pay for it. And I was like, that was one of the impetuses of joining the Navy, of leaving college and going into the military. And I remember when I left, my dad's like, so what are you going to do with all this shit you got here? And I'm like, sell it. I don't even know who it got sold to. I just know I had money. My dad's like, put money in your account. I'm like, okay, thanks. And ended up buying a car out in California. I bought a Honda Civic, an 89. No, not a Civic, a Prelude. That's right, CC car. Yeah, Honda Prelude. No, Civic. CC, Civic. Oh, I forget. It was small and it was red. I know I had a Prelude and I know I had a Civic, so I don't remember which one came first. I was 18. I was in the Navy. I was overseas mostly. Leanne drove it. Leanne's mother, Barbara. I remember that. Yeah, she drove it when we were in California at that point. San Francisco. And then down to Bakersfield and back up to San Francisco, depending on where I was stationed in. Oh, yeah. Then there was Coronado, Southern California, San Diego. Different duty stations. That wasn't even for boot camp. Boot camp was Orlando, and then Great Mistakes, Great Lakes, and then Meridian, Mississippi for Helodome School. Weird. So yeah, that was the story of the Z car, of which I have pictures when I graduated. I went to prom in that car. I have friends with many good memories in that car. Stories that I will not record. Oh my God, an hour. I think that's enough.